The thunder of engines, the crunch of frozen mud beneath steel tracks, and the relentless roar of artillery define the vast battlegrounds of Eastern Europe during the Second World War. Amid the chaos and devastation, one weapon emerged not merely as a machine of war but as a symbol of resilience, innovation, and the Soviet Union's determination to survive and strike back: the T-34 tank. Introduced in 1940, the T-34 was more than a technological marvel. It was the instrument that would help turn the tide on the Eastern Front, challenging the seemingly invincible Wehrmacht and reshaping the strategies of armored warfare forever. At first glance, the T-34 appeared deceptively simple: a medium tank with a sloped armor design and a powerful 76.2 mm gun. Yet within its steel frame lay a combination of mobility, firepower, and durability that confounded German commanders. The sloped armor deflected shells more effectively than conventional vertical plates, increasing the tank's survivability without adding excessive weight. Its wide tracks allowed it to navigate the muddy plains, snowy fields, and frozen rivers that define the Russian landscape, ensuring it could keep pace with rapid offensives or maneuver under conditions that immobilized heavier German tanks. In essence, the T-34's design was a perfect marriage of engineering and strategic foresight: robust, fast, and relatively easy to produce in large numbers. The timing of its deployment was critical. By 1941, Germany had launched Operation Barbarossa, a massive invasion aiming to crush the Soviet Union in a lightning campaign. The Red Army was initially unprepared, suffering devastating losses, and German tanks like the Panzer III and IV appeared overwhelming. Yet the T-34 changed the equation. In the battles of Smolensk and Moscow, these tanks proved resilient against German anti-tank weapons, able to withstand hits that would destroy lighter Soviet vehicles. More importantly, their mobility allowed Soviet units to conduct counterattacks, delaying the German advance and buying crucial time to reorganize defenses. The T-34 was not merely a weapon of destruction, it was a force multiplier, enabling strategic flexibility and sustaining the morale of troops facing a formidable adversary. The production and deployment of the T-34 also reflected a remarkable combination of industrial capability and wartime adaptation. Soviet factories east of the Ural Mountains, far from the front lines, were tasked with producing thousands of these tanks under intense pressure. Unlike some German designs that required meticulous craftsmanship and complex manufacturing, the T-34 emphasized simplicity and reliability. Components were standardized, assembly lines were optimized for speed, and crews were trained to operate and maintain the tanks efficiently. This approach allowed the Soviet Union to replace losses quickly, maintaining operational tempo and ensuring that the Red Army could launch continuous offensives despite the enormous attrition of men and machines. The T-34's production strategy became a model of wartime industrial innovation, demonstrating that efficiency and durability could outweigh sophistication when survival was at stake. Operationally, the T-34 reshaped the conduct of battles on the Eastern Front. During the Battle of Kursk in 1943, the largest tank engagement in history, thousands of T-34s clashed with German panzer divisions in a confrontation that tested tactics, coordination, and endurance. Soviet commanders employed deep defensive lines, minefields, and coordinated infantry support to channel German attacks into kill zones where T-34s could exploit their mobility and firepower. The tank's ability to maneuver across challenging terrain, withstand enemy fire, and strike effectively at both armor and infantry made it the backbone of Soviet armored strategy. Its presence forced the Germans to adapt, leading to the development of heavier tanks like the Tiger and Panther, yet these vehicles could not be produced in comparable numbers, illustrating the strategic advantage conferred by the T-34's balance of performance and mass production. The psychological impact of the T-34 on both Soviet and German forces was profound. For Soviet troops, seeing these tanks rolling onto the battlefield symbolized hope, resilience, and technological parity with their enemy. They were a tangible representation of the state's commitment to victory, boosting morale and reinforcing the belief that the Red Army could endure and overcome. Conversely, German soldiers and officers faced a sobering reality: the tanks they encountered were tougher, faster, and more numerous than anticipated, undermining confidence and complicating tactical planning. Reports from the front described the T-34 as invincible in certain encounters, a perception that, while technically exaggerated, reflected the profound disruption the tank caused to German assumptions about armored supremacy. The T-34's influence extended beyond immediate battlefield outcomes. Its design principles, sloped armor, mobility, and versatility, became benchmarks for post-war tank development worldwide. Nations studied captured models, seeking to replicate or improve upon the balance of protection, firepower, and production efficiency. Moreover, the tank's integration into combined arms operations illustrated the evolving nature of modern warfare. Success depended not merely on individual vehicles but on coordination with infantry, artillery, and air support, emphasizing strategy, communication, and adaptability. The T-34 taught a generation of military planners that victory was achieved not just through superior firepower, but through synergy between technology, tactics, and human skill. Despite its advantages, the T-34 was not without limitations. Early models lacked radios, complicating battlefield communication and coordination, and some mechanical components required frequent maintenance under harsh conditions. Crews faced grueling realities: freezing winters, mud that immobilized even wide tracks, and relentless enemy fire. Yet these challenges highlighted the resilience and ingenuity of Soviet soldiers, who learned to repair, improvise, and maximize the tank's potential under extreme conditions. The human element, training, leadership, and adaptability, proved as critical as engineering, underscoring that even the most advanced machine could achieve its potential only when effectively deployed by skilled operators. By the final years of the war, the T-34 had become a symbol of Soviet industrial and military might. Its contribution to major victories, from Stalingrad to Berlin, cannot be overstated. It provided the Red Army with the capability to execute large-scale offensives, absorb enemy counterattacks, and sustain a relentless push westward. Beyond numbers and technical specifications, the tank represented a synthesis of design ingenuity, production strategy, and human endurance, embodying the broader narrative of the Soviet war effort: a nation tested to its limits, leveraging technology and manpower to achieve victory against a formidable adversary. In retrospect, the T-34's story is one of transformation, of how a single piece of machinery, when integrated into a broader strategic vision, can alter the course of history. It was more than a tank; it was a statement that innovation, resilience, and coordination could overcome initial setbacks, harsh conditions, and a technologically advanced enemy. On the frozen plains, in the smoke-filled ruins of villages and cities, and across the wide expanses of the Eastern Front, the T-34 became a harbinger of Soviet resurgence and a lasting symbol of the interplay between technology and human determination in modern warfare. The Sky's Thunder, B-29 Superfortress in the Pacific. Above the vast blue expanse of the Pacific Ocean, where islands were scattered like stepping stones across thousands of miles, a new kind of warfare was unfolding, one that stretched the limits of human endurance, mechanical engineering, and strategic imagination. The war was no longer confined to the mud-choked fields of Europe; it had become a global contest of reach, precision, and industrial might. In this theater, the Boeing B-29 Superfortress emerged as a symbol of American innovation and the transformative power of air supremacy. With its long range, massive payload, and advanced technological features, the B-29 was not merely a bomber, it was a harbinger of a new era in strategic warfare, capable of bringing the enemy's heartland into the crosshairs of Allied military planning. The development of the B-29 was a monumental undertaking. Conceived as a response to the vast distances of the Pacific, where conventional bombers could not reach Japan from Allied-held territories, the aircraft incorporated unprecedented technological innovations. Pressurized cabins allowed crews to operate comfortably at high altitudes, while remote-controlled gun turrets offered defensive firepower without exposing gunners to enemy attacks. Its four powerful engines provided the necessary lift and speed to carry up to 20 tons of bombs over distances exceeding 3,000 miles. Yet the aircraft was not only a marvel of engineering, it was a logistical and operational challenge, requiring vast bases, specialized maintenance crews, and careful coordination across a theater that tested every element of Allied planning. Operational deployment of the B-29 began in 1944, coinciding with the United States island-hopping campaign across the Pacific. Strategic planners recognized that merely capturing islands would not be sufficient to end the war. The industrial and military heart of Japan itself had to be threatened. B-29s took off from newly constructed bases on islands such as Saipan, Tinian, and Guam, embarking on grueling missions that demanded precise navigation, extended endurance, and exceptional coordination. Crews endured long hours at high altitudes, facing mechanical failures, anti-aircraft fire, and the ever-present threat of enemy fighters. Each mission was a complex orchestration of strategy, technology, and human resilience, requiring every component to function in harmony to achieve the desired impact. The psychological and strategic effects of the B-29 were profound. Unlike previous bombing campaigns, the B-29 could strike directly at the Japanese homeland, undermining the assumption that distance or geography offered protection. Cities, transportation networks, and industrial facilities became targets, creating both physical destruction and a sense of vulnerability that eroded morale. The aircraft's very presence in the skies signaled a shift in the balance of power, forcing Japanese planners to divert fighters, anti-aircraft defenses, and resources to homeland defense at the expense of offensive operations elsewhere. The message was clear: the war could now reach every corner of the enemy's territory, and strategic depth no longer guaranteed safety. The effectiveness of the B-29 also hinged on meticulous planning and logistical support. Each mission required detailed intelligence on weather, terrain, and enemy defenses. Maintenance crews worked tirelessly to ensure that engines, pressurization systems, and bomb mechanisms functioned flawlessly. Airfields had to be designed to accommodate these massive bombers, with long runways and extensive repair facilities capable of sustaining continuous operations. In this way, the B-29 exemplified how modern warfare demanded not only technological innovation but also a sophisticated infrastructure to support it. The aircraft was a node in a vast network of strategy, logistics, and human expertise, demonstrating that technological superiority alone could not achieve victory without operational integration. Crew experiences aboard the B-29 reveal the human dimension of strategic bombing. Airmen faced long flights over open ocean, exposure to extreme temperatures at high altitude, and the constant stress of navigating hostile airspace. Missions could last over 12 hours, requiring sustained focus and coordination among pilots, navigators, bombardiers, gunners, and radio operators. The psychological toll was immense, yet crews derived a sense of purpose from their role in the larger strategy, knowing that each mission brought them closer to weakening Japan's capacity to wage war. Their resilience and adaptability underscored a central lesson: even the most advanced machine requires skilled, determined human operators to reach its full potential. The impact of the B-29 on military strategy cannot be overstated. It demonstrated the potential of long-range, precision bombing to achieve strategic objectives without relying solely on ground invasions. This principle reshaped post-war air power doctrine, influencing the development of subsequent bombers and strategic air commands. Moreover, it highlighted the evolving nature of total war, where victory depended not only on front-line engagements but also on the ability to disrupt industrial capacity, supply chains, and civilian morale. The B-29 became a symbol of this transformation, illustrating how technology could extend the reach of military power and alter the dynamics of conflict across vast distances. Yet the B-29 was not without its challenges. Early models experienced engine overheating, mechanical failures, and complex maintenance requirements. Crews had to be highly trained to operate the sophisticated systems, and the success of missions often depended on flawless coordination among dozens of personnel. Despite these obstacles, the aircraft's advantages, its range, payload, and defensive capabilities enabled it to carry out missions that would have been impossible with earlier designs. The combination of engineering ingenuity, strategic vision, and human skill allowed the B-29 to redefine what was possible in aerial warfare. The culmination of the B-29's impact came in 1945, as the United States intensified its bombing campaign against Japan. Cities like Tokyo, Osaka, and Nagoya were subjected to sustained attacks, disrupting production and transport while creating psychological pressure on both military leaders and the civilian population. The aircraft's strategic reach shortened the path to Japan's eventual surrender, demonstrating that technological superiority, combined with operational excellence, could achieve decisive outcomes with far-reaching consequences. The B-29 did not fight alone. It was part of a broader Allied strategy that integrated intelligence, logistics, and combined arms planning. Yet it symbolized the growing importance of air power in modern warfare, where control of the skies could determine the fate of nations. In retrospect, the B-29 represents more than an aircraft. It embodies a turning point in military strategy, technological innovation, and human endurance. Its design reflected lessons learned from previous conflicts, its deployment showcased the scale of industrial mobilization, and its operational success highlighted the importance of planning, coordination, and adaptability. The superfortress demonstrated that war had evolved into a multidimensional contest, where success depended not only on brute force but on the ability to project power across space, integrate advanced technology, and harness human skill under extreme conditions. The legacy of the B-29 endures beyond World War II. It influenced the design of post-war bombers, shaped air power doctrine, and provided invaluable experience in long-range strategic operations. More than that, it illustrates a fundamental principle of modern warfare: victory requires the integration of technology, logistics, and human determination into a coherent strategy capable of sustaining operations over time and space. The skies above the Pacific, once a theater of uncertainty and isolation, became a domain where strategic reach, engineering ingenuity, and human courage converged, demonstrating that control of the air could redefine the trajectory of a global conflict. Engines of victory, combined strategic impact. War is often described as a contest of men and machines, yet in the vast theaters of World War II, victory frequently hinged on the seamless integration of both. On one side, the T-34 tanks rumbled across the frozen plains of Eastern Europe, while on the other, B-29 superfortresses soared over the Pacific, striking industrial centers and reshaping the dynamics of conflict. Though separated by geography and theater, these machines shared a common thread: they were embodiments of technological innovation, industrial might, and strategic foresight. Together, they illustrate how engineering ingenuity, logistical prowess, and human resilience could converge to create decisive advantages in a total war that demanded more than brute force. The T-34's contribution to the Eastern Front and the B-29's role in the Pacific may appear as isolated stories, yet a closer examination reveals a shared lesson: the effective deployment of technology requires more than production, it demands doctrine, training, and adaptability. Soviet planners recognized early that the T-34's potential could only be realized through coordinated armored tactics, combined arms integration, and efficient supply chains. Tanks alone could not defeat the Wehrmacht; infantry, artillery, and air support were essential. Similarly, the B-29's long-range bombing missions relied on meticulously planned routes, synchronized crews, and sophisticated maintenance support. Success in both cases was not merely a matter of possessing superior machines, but of leveraging them through strategic thought, rigorous planning, and human skill. Industrial mobilization was another critical link between these theaters of war. The Soviet Union's capacity to produce thousands of T-34s under harsh conditions, often in factories relocated east of the Urals, exemplifies the importance of resilient, adaptable production networks. Standardized components and simplified designs allowed mass production even under the constant threat of invasion. Across the Pacific, the United States demonstrated a similar approach with the B-29, constructing entire bases on captured islands, maintaining complex supply lines across thousands of miles, and coordinating industrial output from the mainland to meet operational needs. In both instances, the success of these machines on the battlefield was inseparable from the scale, efficiency, and foresight of wartime industry. Logistics emerged as the silent engine of victory. For the T-34, the harsh winters, muddy spring thaws, and vast distances of the Eastern Front required robust supply chains for fuel, ammunition, and maintenance. Soviet commanders innovated under pressure, establishing mobile repair units, decentralized depots, and efficient transport networks to keep armored divisions operational. The B-29's missions demanded equally intricate logistics. Long flights over the Pacific required precise fuel calculations, spare parts for complex engines, and extensive coordination among airfields, support personnel, and intelligence units. Both theaters illustrate that technological innovation alone could not achieve decisive outcomes. Without a meticulously maintained logistical backbone, even the most advanced weapon risked ineffectiveness. Operational strategy in these contexts reflected a blend of flexibility, coordination, and adaptation. The T-34 enabled deep defensive lines, counteroffensives, and encirclement tactics that capitalized on mobility and firepower, while the B-29 allowed the Allies to implement strategic bombing campaigns aimed at industrial disruption and morale impact. These approaches share a conceptual thread: the machines extended the strategic reach of their respective armies. One operated on the ground, enabling armies to reclaim territory and disrupt enemy formations; the other operated in the air, allowing planners to strike at the enemy's capacity to wage war across vast distances. In both cases, operational success required synchronization between technology, strategy, and the human operators who executed the missions under extreme conditions. The psychological dimension of this dual impact cannot be overstated. German forces on the Eastern Front faced waves of T-34s that challenged conventional assumptions about armored warfare, undermining morale and forcing tactical adaptation. Japanese forces in the Pacific experienced a similar phenomenon as B-29 raids brought destruction to urban and industrial centers previously considered out of reach. These weapons were not only instruments of destruction, they were instruments of perception, reshaping how enemies understood threat, reach, and vulnerability. By projecting power effectively, both the T-34 and the B-29 influenced enemy decision-making, demonstrating that technological superiority carries psychological weight alongside physical impact. Furthermore, the integration of these machines into broader warfighting doctrine highlights the evolution of total war. The T-34 exemplified the principle that massed, reliable armored formations, when coordinated with infantry, artillery, and air support, could achieve strategic depth and operational flexibility. The B-29 demonstrated that long-range air power could project influence, disrupt supply chains, and force the enemy to commit resources defensively, effectively extending the strategic reach of the United States. Together, they illustrate the expanding dimensions of warfare. Victory depended not only on front-line engagements but on the ability to control land, sea, and air simultaneously, integrating technology, human effort, and logistics into a cohesive operational framework. Industrial learning from these machines also shaped post-war military planning and doctrine. Nations studied the T-34's balance of simplicity, reliability, and combat effectiveness when designing future armored vehicles. Lessons from the B-29 informed bomber development, air logistics, and crew training for the Cold War era. More broadly, the combined example of these machines demonstrated that modern conflict required a marriage of innovation and practicality. Sophisticated technology needed to be matched by production capability, operational planning, and human skill. In essence, the war became a laboratory in which engineers, strategists, and logisticians collaborated to create instruments of national power that transcended individual battles. The human element remained central throughout. Tank crews operating T-34s endured freezing winters, limited supplies, and relentless enemy fire, while B-29 crews faced long flights over open ocean, mechanical failures, and anti-aircraft defenses. In both cases, training, improvisation, and endurance determined the effectiveness of machines whose potential could otherwise be wasted. These experiences underscore a fundamental truth of warfare: even the most advanced weapons system requires human ingenuity and courage to realize its impact. Technology amplifies human capability but does not replace it. Finally, the combined legacy of the T-34 and B-29 offers enduring lessons about adaptability and integration. Both machines emerged in response to pressing operational challenges, yet their influence extended far beyond immediate combat objectives. The T-34 reshaped armored doctrine, battlefield tactics, and industrial strategy in the Soviet Union, while the B-29 redefined strategic bombing and air power projection for the United States. Their effectiveness was multiplied by operational integration, industrial foresight, and human skill, demonstrating that the outcome of modern warfare depends on the alignment of multiple factors: technology, strategy, logistics, and personnel rather than the isolated performance of any single component. In retrospect, these engines of victory exemplify how innovation, when combined with foresight and coordination, can alter the trajectory of global conflict. The T-34 and B-29 were not merely tools of destruction, they were instruments of strategic transformation, shaping doctrine, morale, and industrial priorities. Their stories reveal that modern warfare is multidimensional, requiring mastery over machines, human resources, and the complex logistics that connect them. As history continues to examine World War II, these machines stand as enduring symbols of how technology, ingenuity, and coordinated effort converge to create decisive outcomes, proving that the integration of innovation and strategy can ultimately define the fate of nations. Financing total war, war bonds in the USA and UK. When the guns fell silent on the battlefield, the war raged on in banks, offices, and city streets. The Second World War was not only a struggle of armies and machines but also a contest of economies, a test of nations' capacity to mobilize resources on a scale never seen before. Industrial output, weapons production, and supply chains all demanded vast sums of money, far beyond the limits of traditional taxation. Governments turned to their citizens, transforming ordinary individuals into financial allies through war bonds. In the United States and the United Kingdom, these instruments became the backbone of wartime finance, simultaneously funding military campaigns, stabilizing economies, and forging a sense of national participation that blurred the line between home front and front line. In the United States, the concept of war bonds was introduced soon after Pearl Harbor in December 1941. The Treasury's defense bonds and later Liberty bonds were designed to attract public investment in the war effort while controlling inflation. The campaigns were unprecedented in scale and ambition. Posters adorned city streets, radio broadcasts reached millions, and celebrities lent their voices to encourage purchase. Children sold bonds in schools, factory workers organized drives, and entire communities competed to contribute the largest sums. The government framed bond buying not merely as a financial transaction but as a patriotic duty. Each bond purchased was a tangible contribution to the nation's fight against Axis powers. By 1945, Americans had purchased more than $185 billion in war bonds, a figure that underscores not only the program's financial success but its social and psychological impact. The appeal of war bonds went beyond duty; they were presented as sound investments with guaranteed returns. Bonds typically matured over 10 years, offering a fixed interest rate, which made them attractive even to those with modest means. But the genius of the program lay in its integration of finance with propaganda and community engagement. Drive organizers staged rallies, competitions, and themed campaigns such as War Bond Weeks, creating social pressure and a sense of collective achievement. Schools encouraged students to contribute, often turning savings into public displays of national solidarity. In effect, Americans were transformed from passive taxpayers into active participants in the war economy, investing both money and morale in the larger struggle. Across the Atlantic, the United Kingdom faced similar financial pressures, though under different economic conditions. The nation had already endured years of austerity following the Great Depression, and the demands of a prolonged conflict intensified the strain on public finances. To meet these needs, the British government introduced war savings certificates and national savings certificates, designed to encourage contributions from citizens of all income levels. The emphasis was on inclusivity; even modest amounts could be invested, ensuring broad participation. Campaigns employed posters, pamphlets, and endorsements from prominent figures, conveying the message that every contribution mattered. National Savings Weeks and thematic initiatives turned financial support into a civic ritual, reinforcing a sense of unity and shared purpose during a time of scarcity and uncertainty. The practical effects of these programs were profound. War bonds enabled governments to finance massive military operations without resorting to uncontrolled money printing, which could trigger runaway inflation. By converting private savings into government debt, both the United States and United Kingdom effectively redistributed the financial burden of war across millions of citizens. The funds raised were critical in sustaining industrial production, supplying troops, and maintaining strategic flexibility. In addition, bonds helped control consumer spending, absorbing excess liquidity that might have fueled inflation during periods of rationing and scarcity. In this way, war bonds were not merely a funding mechanism, they were a sophisticated tool of economic stabilization. The psychological dimension of war bonds was equally significant. Posters, radio announcements, and public ceremonies transformed financial support into a form of visible patriotism. In the United States, slogans like "Buy a Bond, Help America Fight," framed each purchase as an act of courage and contribution. In Britain, imagery often depicted workers, mothers, and children participating in the effort, reinforcing the idea that victory required the cooperation of the entire population. Bonds became symbols of civic duty, morale, and solidarity, demonstrating that financial participation could have as much symbolic power as physical presence on the battlefield. Moreover, the war bond programs revealed the interdependence between finance, industrial mobilization, and military strategy. In the United States, the funds supported the construction of factories, research into advanced weaponry, and the mass production of aircraft, ships, and tanks. In Britain, bond proceeds sustained munitions factories, transportation networks, and civil defense measures critical for enduring the Blitz and maintaining military readiness. Both nations illustrated that modern warfare extended far beyond front lines. Victory depended on the capacity to marshal and sustain economic resources, organize civilian populations, and translate financial commitment into tangible military advantage. War bonds also fostered a sense of agency among citizens. Ordinary individuals, who might never see combat or handle a weapon, could participate meaningfully in the war effort. A bond purchased by a factory worker, a teacher, or a homemaker became part of a larger machinery sustaining troops, aircraft, tanks, and ships. This created a psychological feedback loop. The more citizens invested, the more industrial output increased, the stronger the military effort became, and the more morale was reinforced at home. In essence, war bonds transformed the home front into a theater of action, where finance and civic responsibility converged to support the fight abroad. By the war's end, the impact of war bonds went beyond the immediate financial contribution. They had reshaped the relationship between state and citizen, demonstrating that collective effort, whether through labor, sacrifice, or financial support, was essential to national survival. They exemplified the concept of total war, where every sector of society, every individual, and every dollar contributed to the ultimate goal of victory. The lessons of these programs extended into peacetime, influencing national savings policies, public finance strategies, and approaches to civic engagement in subsequent decades. In retrospect, war bonds were more than instruments of debt. They were instruments of national cohesion and strategic necessity. In the United States and the United Kingdom, they turned economic contribution into patriotic action, provided essential funding for massive military operations, and stabilized domestic economies under extreme strain. By linking the home front directly to the battlefield, they demonstrated that victory in modern warfare required not only machines and soldiers but also the active participation of millions of civilians willing to invest their savings, trust, and commitment in the broader national cause. Ultimately, the story of war bonds in World War II is a story of ingenuity, coordination, and social mobilization. It reveals that wars are not fought solely by armies but by nations, and that financial structures, when combined with effective communication, social engagement, and strategic vision, can become as decisive as tanks, planes, or artillery. In this sense, the people who bought bonds were as much engines of victory as the T-34 rolling across the Eastern Front or the B-29 soaring over the Pacific. Through dollars, pounds, and certificates, ordinary citizens helped finance extraordinary feats, turning the abstract concept of national finance into a concrete instrument of global conflict, resilience, and ultimate triumph.